Welcome to a Mistweaver Monk Mythic Plus guide for War Within Season 3. This guide's going to touch on talents, the new changes, the rotation, and much more. My goal is to make it easy to follow for first-time Mistweavers, but with enough depth that returning Mistweavers can jump into the season understanding everything that's changed. To limit confusion, I'll be covering the primary hero talent tree, Master of Harmony, but Conduit is also a great option this season. My name's ElbenNinja7, let's get into it. Starting off with stats, as you level your character, just look for intellect and item level for the biggest boost. Once geared or given the option between two similar items, your secondary stat priority for this build is haste, then crit, then verse, then mastery. Haste is very clearly your best stat as it enables you to cast more spells during your cooldown as well as enhance your base rotation. It's important to note though that verse is more valuable the higher you push, and also if you play Conduit since it scales the shields that you apply as well. However, in normal circumstances, crit is just the better throughput stat. Finally, Mastery adds a fair amount of healing, especially during your chiji window, but often it just goes into overhealing then. Now let's talk about the core of Mistweaver that you're going to be playing around. This being the passives Jadefire Teachings, Awaken Jadefire, and Teachings of the Monastery, as well as the spell that enables you Jadefire Stomp, and the 3 single target damaging spells that make up your rotation because of how these passives enhance them, those being Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, and Rising Sun Kick. Now you'll notice that a lot of our core is just damaging spells and passives that buff those damaging spells, and that's because that's how we do most of our healing. The most important thing to understand is a passive named Ancient Teachings. This is baseline and converts our damage from Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, Rising Sun Kick, and Crackling Jade Lightning into healing. How it does healing is it takes 30% of the damage that you do and splits it among any allies that need healing up to 5 allies nearby. So if everyone's full health, it's not going to do anything, but if all 5 allies are missing health, it's going to split that healing evenly among them. Now, like I said, it only converts 30% of the damage into healing, but thanks to a very powerful talent, Jadefire Teachings, we boost that number to 245% of the damage that we do being converted into healing with these 4 spells. This is only one of 2 very important buffs that we gain after we cast Jadefire Stomp for 15 seconds, and it can also be gained by casting Thunder Focus Tea. However, Jadefire Stomp is so important, as you'll see, that you're going to want to use it to maintain Jadefire Teachings. So a lot of what we do to optimize our healing is number 1, maintain Jadefire Teachings at all times, because without it, you are 8 times weaker, you do 8 times less healing. And number 2, do as much damage as you can to do as much healing as you can. And we do this because our rotation revolves around these ideas, as well as the 2 passives Teachings of the Monastery and Awaken Jadefire. Together, these passives make each Tiger Palm hit twice and cause our next Blackout Kick to hit an additional time up to 4 times. Blackout Kick will also cleave onto up to 3 allies thanks to Awaken Jadefire, and each time that Blackout Kick hits an enemy, it's also going to have a chance to reset Rising Sun Kick's cooldown, which hits a single target very hard as well as has a ton of little synergies within our kit, such as extending every single mist hot that's on one of our allies. With these 3 passives alone, we already have the foundation for our primary rotation, and the best part of Mistweaver is this is the rotation that you're going to use a large majority of the time. For your rotation, Jadefire Stomp often enough to maintain Jadefire Teachings. Each time you cast Jadefire Stomp, it's going to give you 15 seconds of the buff. After that, Rising Sun Kick on cooldown, which can be after it naturally cools down, or if Blackout Kick resets it. Then you're going to Tiger Palm until you have 4 stacks of Teachings of the Monastery, which should just be casting it twice since it will hit twice if you're on your Jadefire Stomp. And finally, once you're at 4 stacks of Teachings of the Monastery, you're going to Blackout Kick. This is going to allow you to unleash a flurry of stacked up cleaving Blackout Kicks once every 3-ish globals for very good maintenance damage and healing. As well as you're going to get a lot of Rising Sun Kicks off, which is going to keep HOTS flowing, as well as keep your Vivacious Vivification proc available whenever you need it in a pinch. You will have to interrupt this rotation to add in cooldowns, spot healing, utility, as well as a few other things, but for the most part, these spells are your bread and butter. Now, as we move off of the base rotation, let's talk about the hero talent tree, Tierset, and Thunder Focus Tea, as they all kind of go hand in hand. Starting with Thunder Focus Tea, this is a semi-rotational spell that you have 2 charges of, has a 30-second cooldown, and it enhances your next spell. It can alter the effects of the spells that it lists, but really the big one is Rising Sun Kick. After you press Thunder Focus Tea, your next Rising Sun Kick will have a very short cooldown, making it possible to cast Rising Sun Kick, some other spell, and then Rising Sun Kick again. This commonly leads to sequences like Jadefire Stomp, Thunder Focus Tea, Rising Sun Kick, Tiger Palm, Rising Sun Kick, Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, and then Rising Sun Kick again for some very bursty funnel damage if you get that Rising Sun Kick reset. The other uses that may come up are Thunder Focus Teeing and Enveloping Mist to make it instant cast if you need an instant spot heal on the move, or you can Thunder Focus Tea and Expel Harm to put a small shield on yourself in a pinch. On top of this, you're going to gain a versatility buff after you use it on a Rising Sun Kick or an Expel Harm, or you gain a crit buff if you use it on Enveloping Mist, thanks to Secret Infusion. Thunder Focus Tea is an extremely important spell to never sit at 2 charges of, as it enables your hero talent tree and one of your most powerful effects, Jade Empowerment, which I will touch on later in the guide to avoid confusion. However, the hero talent tree is one of the most misunderstood groups of passives in the entire game, so allow me to try to simplify it. As you damage and heal, some of what you do will be stored in an invisible bucket called Vitality. This Vitality caps at whatever your health number is, so make sure to track it to know when you are sitting at cap. The moment you press Thunder Focus Tea, you start a 10-second timer to use up as much of your stored Vitality as you can, and if you don't use it, whatever's left will disappear at the end of that 10-second timer. What this Vitality gets converted into, what you're using it for, is it either gets applied to your enemies as a dot or your allies as a hot, both called Aspect of Harmony. It's important to note that any healing that you do to your allies can use up some of that vitality to apply the hot to them, but only these 3 single target damaging spells can be used to first apply the dot. Once Aspect of Harmony is applied, any damage or healing onto that target will draw further vitality to enhance that Aspect of Harmony. I know it's a lot, but let's just take a look at just using Aspect to do damage to simplify things. Say I'm full on vitality because I've been fighting for like 25 seconds and I want to use as much of it as I can on doing damage. What I could do is I would first stack up my Tiger Palm so that my next Blackout Kick hits multiple times, and then I would press Thunder Focus Tea to start drawing from that vitality, attempting to apply the dot onto enemies. Then I would Rising Sun Kick, Blackout Kick, Rising Sun Kick to make sure that the dot is at least applied to something that I just hit, and then I can continue my damage rotation normally to enhance the dot and use up the rest of the vitality. You can also do something like Thunder Focus Tea, Rising Sun Kick, Blackout Kick, and then Spinning Crane Kick, which is great at enhancing any dots that those cleaving Blackout Kicks applied. However, one example of something that you can't do is pop Thunder Focus Tea and then go right into Spinning Crane Kicking or Crackling Jade Lightning, for example, as these don't apply the dot. They can only enhance what these 3 spells have already applied. And then looking at just the healing aspect of things, no pun intended, you can apply the hot with any healing spell. So if you want to use your vitality as the hot or the healing amplifying effect, pop Thunder Focus Tea and follow it by Tiger Palms or healing spells to spread around that hot. Now moving on to the tier set, it says that as you gain vitality, you gain an increasing chance to gain a stack of potential energy. And what this does is it makes your next Tiger Palm come with a burst of AoE healing and a tiny amount of AoE damage. You'll also gain 2 stacks guaranteed whenever you Thunder Focus Tea. In essence, this just says that as you fight, occasionally you're going to gain stacks of enhanced Tiger Palms. This doesn't change the fact that you want to Thunder Focus Tea once you hit max vitality, even though it reads like you should probably want to sit at max vitality to get a lot of potential energy stacks. However, one thing that this does change is it makes our weakest global cooldown in Tiger Palm much stronger and makes our base rotation go from this to this, which is very nice. Also, since Tiger Palm now does AoE healing when you press it after your Thunder Focus Teas or whenever you have potential energy, it also means that it will attempt to put Aspect of Harmony on your allies if you Tiger Palm during that aspect window. This can take away from some of the damage that you do when you just want to apply a big dot with your Aspect of Harmony, but it also makes it very easy to spread around the hot to your party before big AoE damaging mechanics that you need to heal through, since you can Thunder Focus Tea followed by the 2 potential energied Tiger Palms to spread Aspect around very easily. This hero talent tree and tier set is fantastic because it doesn't really add too much complexity to an already pretty complex hero tree, but it does fix some small weaknesses that Mistweaver previously had, like how weak Tiger Palm was before. Now let's talk about spot healing, as this has changed quite a bit. If an ally takes a smack that needs a quick top-me-up, cast Vivify on them. This Vivify will be instant cast thanks to Vivacious Vivification if you've cast a Rising Sun Kick in the last 20 seconds, and if you haven't already used this Vivacious proc. But as long as you're executing your rotation properly, you should have this ready almost all the time. However, if you don't have Vivacious ready, or if your ally needs more than just one Vivify's worth of spot healing, then channel Soothing Mist and cast Vivifies on them to heal them through that damage. If you have a bit of time before they need the Vivify, or the healing is intense over time, you can first Soothing Mist followed by an Enveloping Mist and then slam Vivifies, since Enveloping Mist enhances the healing that you do to that target by 40%. Now on one hand, the change to Vivacious Vivification can kind of suck until you get used to it, but once you're used to it, you can do some very cool things like Vivify, Thunder Focus Tea, Rising Sun Kick, Vivify, Rising Sun Kick, Vivify for a nice little burst of spot healing or AoE pogo healing. But if you have a lot of time to prep for single target damage, you can also start by casting a Renewing Mist on that targeted ally. This is going to guarantee that they get Chi Harmony on them, which makes your heals on them 25% stronger, but this is much less important now that it's just 25% as opposed to what it used to be, which was 50%. Your Vivifies also cleave some of the healing on any active Renewing Mist, so try and apply Renewing Mist to your allies as you're running up to a pack, just to make healing that pack that much easier. Alright, now on to the big section, your cooldowns. I'll start with Jade Empowerment as I've already mentioned it earlier in the video, but what this is a passive that you gain after pressing Thunder Focus Tea that causes your next Crackling Jade Lightning to cleave onto 4 additional targets and do 2000% more damage to your primary target and 500% more damage to each of the 4 cleaved targets. I definitely consider this a healing cooldown since, remember, Jade Lightning is one of the listed spells under Ancient Teachings, so it will heal for the damage that it does. Another reason that I'm mentioning this now, as opposed to when I was talking about Thunder Focus Tea, is because a lot of people think that you need to cast Crackling Jade Lightning immediately after casting Thunder Focus Tea, but you don't. Jade Empowerment does not have a timer, it just caps out at 2 stacks. Still, press your Thunder Focus Tea when you cap on Vitality and sit on those Jade Empowerment charges until you need the healing. It's also very important to note that this healing behaves like Ancient Teachings healing, meaning that it will only do the full amount of healing if you have Jadefire Teachings active. Do not Crackling Jade Lightning without making sure that you have Jadefire Teachings active. Also, this means that the healing that it does is split evenly among allies that need healing, making it insanely good at single target healing through like tank busters on AoE packs or other moments where only like 1 or 2 allies are below 100% health, because all of that healing will funnel straight into those health bars. And while Jade Empowerment is much stronger when it's able to cleave, it's still very much worth pressing in single target. The next cooldown is Life Cocoon, which is very simple. It's just a large shield that you apply to an ally. This is the closest that we have to a tank external, but it's still a very good option to save a DPS or even yourself in a pinch. It has a relatively low cooldown, so make sure and try to find some good use for it to keep it on cooldown. Another healing cooldown is Sheilun's Gift. This is a variable cooldown, meaning that it can either be used as an AoE throughput heal or a massive single target shock heal. What that depends on is this talent node right here. I recommend that you default to it being an AoE heal. However, both hero talent trees have a lot more AoE healing coming into Season 3, and I have really liked using Emperor's Favor as a giant single target heal in my PTR testing. But once again, default to it being an AoE, and then consider Emperor's Favor if you find yourself needing more single target spot healing in certain dungeons. But how Shayluns works is you're going to gain a stack of it every 4 seconds that you're in combat. Once you cast Shayluns, it's going to consume all the stacks that you have and is going to heal based on how many stacks were consumed. You ideally cast AoE Shayluns to combat heavy AoE damage once you're around 7 to 9 stacks. I say 7 to 9 because any less than 7 is likely not going to heal enough to be worth it, and sitting at 10 stacks too long since it caps at 10 is also obviously not very good. Since this only takes 40 seconds to fully recharge to 10 stacks, try not to let it sit there for too long. If you run the single target Shayluns, you can use it at even less stacks. I've found that 5 stacks safely tops a DPS player, while about 7 stacks pretty much tops tank health bars. Maybe that's just when they crit, but it felt like you could use it a lot lower since this scales a lot harder per stack. Next up is Revival, which did receive a big healing buff coming into Season 3. This is a 3-minute cooldown that does an instant heal to all allies, as well as it dispels any magic, disease, or poison effects on them. Ideally, use this when it gets healing and dispelling value, but don't be afraid to send this as a panic heal. Finally, we have Chiji. This is our most powerful healing cooldown, but you can't just cast it and have everyone receive healing like you can with Revival. Instead, this summons Chiji beside you to enhance your spells. While Chiji is out, your kicks will also kick up 3 mastery procs onto 2 allies each, whenever your kicks connect with an enemy. Chiji also gains a stack each time you kick, reducing the cast time and mana cost of your next Enveloping Mist by a third. Chiji's also going to splash Enveloping Breath onto your allies whenever you cast an Enveloping Mist while she's present, increasing the healing that they receive and applying a small little hot. What all of this means is that you're going to summon Chiji, then try to get to 3 stacks of Chiji as fast as possible, then cast an Enveloping Mist for free and instantly, and then rinse and repeat. How to optimally use Chiji is to make sure that you get to 4 stacks of Teachings of the Monastery before you summon her. Also, try and have a fresh Jadefire Teachings buff, that way you at least have 15 seconds where you don't have to waste a global refreshing that. And then you're going to press Chiji right before the big damage starts. Since she comes with an AoE shield when you summon her, this makes the first bit of damage eat into that. Then, since you prepped your Chiji by Tiger Palming before summoning it, you start your rotation with a Blackout Kick after that damage hits. This Blackout Kick is going to hit so many times, unleashing a flurry, making sure that you get to 3 stacks of Chiji, letting you cast your next Enveloping Mist instantly, and then you can continue with your base rotation, just slotting in Enveloping Mists when they're instant. One important thing to note is that you can have Chiji as either a 1-minute cooldown or a 2-minute cooldown. As a 1-minute cooldown, it's only going to last 12 seconds versus the normal 25 seconds, and the mastery procs are going to heal for less. I highly recommend starting with the 1-minute cooldown that Gift of the Celestials provides, as this makes healing early dungeons much easier, and it will give you double the reps of practicing with Chiji. Once you start to hit a wall and you're key pushing where 1-minute Chiji might start to struggle to heal through certain healing checks, you can absolutely swap to Jade Bond. Just understand that this will sacrifice having it up every single pack, every single minute. Now, your cooldowns are very strong and versatile, but I do want to take a second to give a more advanced tip since it can push your healing to the next level. As a Mistweaver, you have a lot of ways to enhance the healing that you do. I've already mentioned 2 of them being Aspect of Harmony's Hot on your allies, giving them a 20% bonus healing received, and also Chi Harmony, which is when your fresh Renewing Mist give them a 25% bonus healing for 8 seconds. But Enveloping Mist also enhances the healing that ally takes by a further 40%. While these healing modifiers don't affect the healing that they receive from Jade Empowerment, since that scales off of the damage you do, these healing modifiers do affect Shaylun's Gift and Revival. So if you know a big healing mechanic is coming up and you're about to lean on Shaylun's or Revival to heal through that mechanic, take the time to cast a few enveloping mists on your allies, especially the squishies, and then Rising Sun Kick to extend all of those hots, or you can Thunder Focus Tea followed by a few Tiger Palms and healing spells to spread around the hot of Aspect of Harmony. Each of these actions are going to push your healing cooldowns to their true limits and make you much more adept at healing through major damage spikes. On the other side of this coin, I mentioned that Jade Empowerment wasn't affected by healing amplifiers. However, it is affected by damage amplifiers. So if you know you're about to Crackling Jade Lightning to heal through a big mechanic, try and apply your Aspect Dot onto the enemy beforehand so they're going to take 20% more damage from that Crackling Jade Lightning. Another min-max thing that you can do to prep for bigger, burstier Jade Empowerment Crackling Jade Lightnings is to stack up Balanced Stratagem beforehand. This says that your nature spells and physical spells are going to give you a stack, increasing the effects of the other type by up to 15% at 5 stacks. Basically, if you cast 5 physical spells before pressing a nature spell, Crackling Jade Lightning for example, you can make it do 15% more damage. I will note that the best few spells to stack this up, the physical stacks, are Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, and Spinning Crane Kick, but not Rising Sun Kick, since when you Rising Sun Kick, it casts a free Renewing Mist on an ally, and that will consume all of those physical stacks since that is a nature spell. So if you know you're going to heal through an upcoming mechanic with Jade Empowerment, just avoid casting Rising Sun Kick or any spot heals or Jade Fire Stomp, spells like that for a few seconds to freely enhance that Crackling Jade Lightning. Outside of that, Mistweaver monks have excellent utility, so make sure that you're using your stun, your kick, and your suite of defensives. The final thing that I want to touch on is talent variations. I think this section can be helpful to understand when and why you would swap away from the standard build, but also can help future-proof this guide to handle any tuning, some buffs or nerfs to our healing sources, and dungeon changes. This is the standard build that I would recommend for most keys. The first variants that I've kind of already mentioned are swapping between 1 and 2 minute chiji and AoE or single target Shayloons. Understand that seeing top pushers use 2 minute chiji doesn't necessarily mean that it's your best option, and Shayloons may find some use throughout the season as a single target or an AoE heal, depending on the dungeons and tuning of the rest of our sources. The other change would be swapping to Celestial Conduit. Mistweaver is a spec that has 2 fantastic hero trees, and you might see some high-end pushers opt for Conduit since it's still the safer option. It is 100% okay to swap to Celestial Conduit, as it is just as powerful in different ways than Master of Harmony. And also, if healer damage remains so far behind tank damage next season, you could just see people say screw it and swap to Conduit anyways. But you could take that same argument and say, well, if healer damage is so low, Master of Harmony at least does a good amount of damage, so maybe we take that instead. So, like I'm saying, both have their strengths. It is okay to play either one. But guys, with that, you are ready to tackle any dungeon as Mistweaver. My goal was to help you understand what the rotation is and why it is that way, as well as help you understand the tools that you have to supplement that rotation and handle anything a dungeon can throw at you. If you still have questions, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. And while you're down there, make sure and like and subscribe, as it helps me continue to make guides like this one. If you want to see this build in action, check out my Twitch to see if I'm streaming. As always, thank you for watching and supporting this channel, and a special thanks to the patrons who keep this channel going. I'll see you guys on the leaderboards. Until then, take care.